Yeah, I've been working in this genre for most of my 40 years. The easiest way to define it is to say, and I recognize that this is kind of pathetic, but I've spent my entire career trying to recreate the feeling I had when I first played Dungeons and Dragons. It's not the content. We really, please get us away from content like giant dragons that guard treasure hoards and alien invasions. Like, let's just stop. I'm not going to curse. Stop doing that. But the feeling I got was of wonder, was telling stories with my friends, not being told a story. By the way, if you're into Cyberpunk, my first game master, my first dungeon master, was a guy named Bruce Sterling, who was one of the founders of Cyberpunk, along with Bill Gibson. But it was telling a story myself, being the storyteller. And so I've spent my professional career trying to give every player the feeling of being an author, of telling their story. The skeleton comes from me, the skeleton comes from my teams, but the flesh on the bones comes from players. It's about empowering players to create unique experiences. That's the heart of immersive simulation, if I could sum it up in a sentence. Letting every player author their own unique experience. What I tell my teams is, if two players describe the same experience of an encounter or of a mission or of a game, we've failed. And you know, there are lots of games that tell completely linear cinematic stories, and I just want to tell those people, just go make a movie. You obviously want to make a movie. You're not giving I mean, when the only choice you have to make is, what gun do I use? And when the AI of the NPCs is, oh look, now they can flank you, it's like, get out of my medium, you know? I just don't get it. So it's about empowering players. There are all sorts of developmental things that are different that would take too long to go into. But one funny thing is, when I hire people, especially senior people, I say, you're here because of your experience, but what we do here is different than anything you've ever done and harder than anything you've ever done. And they all roll their eyes and go, yeah, whatever. And then a year later, they come back to me and say, you were right. So the immersive sims are different. They're built differently. They play differently. And every player had a unique experience, every player an author. I had one guy, I don't want to know how many times, there's a guy in the audience who has dressed up as J.C. Denton, and it's freaking me out.
Yes,
but
it's a bit scary.
It's awesome, by the way. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. But I don't want to know how many times you played Deus Ex. I had a friend, a non-gamer, who was house sitting for me, and you know, Deus Ex was on my desktop, and he said, okay, I'll try it. This is what Warren does. And he played it through 7 times and had a different experience each time. I was at another conference, at the Game Developers Conference, and a guy came up to me dressed as J.C. Denton, though not as impressively as anyway. And he told me, he was from Germany, and he told me that he had played Deus Ex 63 times. And we had a longer conversation, which was very uncomfortable for me, and he convinced me. He had played it 63 times, and he then happily told me that he was going back home the next day, which made me very happy, because I really didn't want to be on the same continent with a guy who played Deus Ex 63 times. But you have a different experience every time you play. That's the immersive sim thing. I'll give you one more explanatory example. In a lot of games, I would argue most games, here's what you would hear one player saying to another. Wasn't it cool when you got to the edge of that chasm and you leaped across the chasm and just barely held on by your fingertips, and you looked up and there was a dinosaur, and you got out your gun and shot him in the face? And another player says, yeah, that was really cool. Like, how is that player agency? they both had the same experience. What I want is that first player describing that experience and the second player saying, what chasm? Okay, because they found another way to get to the other side. That's immersive simulation.
There's one quick